You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the August 25th meeting for the LaPorte County budget hearings. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Good evening. Thank you for joining. I'd like to restart continue the budget workshops for 2026 calendar year. This evening, we have a representative from Baker Tilly and a draft of the comprehensive financial plan in front of us, and I'm hoping that he wouldn't mind coming up and presenting it to us.
Good evening. Jason Simler, Baker Tilly. And as mentioned, I do have a draft of the comprehensive financial plan that we've been working on and working with Mike on. So tonight is just kind of present the first draft for you to look at as you're working through your budget. I do plan on, and there will be more. And hopefully this will be kind of a tool that you can be used as you're, furthering your discussions on the budget to help you determine, how much revenue we anticipate that you're going to have in 2026 and beyond, to help you make those decisions on what you can afford or what services you'll be able to provide, or additional discussions on revenues and expenses as you move forward the next couple weeks and months. So I'm going through this report. I want this report to be your report, something that you use not just beyond, in the next couple weeks, but even into next year as you finalize your budget and kind of compare actual revenues and actual expenses to our estimates. So I kind of want this to be informal. We'll kind of talk about some of the assumptions that we've made. If you feel like, no, we want to tweak something here and there, that's the reason this is a draft. This is kind of a time for your feedback. And also, as you start formalizing your budget for next year, we can update that and incorporate those numbers into this report so it reflects the most accurate and current information available. With that being said, I'll kind of start with page 1. There's some general comments and some highlights that I wanted to point out that you can read at a later date, but did want to point out some of the assumptions that we did in as far as how we came up with some of our numbers. So if you turn to page 1, this report does go through not only 2026, but through 2028. So with that, there are some assumptions that we made with the new legislation with SCA 1 that was passed this spring. That kind of starts on page 1, just very, very high level. I recognize some of the faces, so some of you saw me and heard me and some of my colleagues at the county last week talking about SC1 and some of those impacts. We kind of addressed some of those on page 1 as well. In the middle of the page, we talk about assessed values. I won't go into great detail, but you'll be seeing that we're making some assumptions that we think the circuit breaker credits, circuit breaker losses that you're seeing, we think that those will increase over time. And a large part of that is because we think that there's a good chance that your tax base could potentially decrease with due to the fact that SCA 1 is giving some additional deductions and exemptions to taxpayers throughout the county to try to reduce their property taxes. Again, great news for your constituents that their property taxes will go down, but reduction in property taxes to them means less revenue to the council. Maximum levy growth quotient. As you know, in the last couple years, there is a formula that statewide, doesn't matter if you're LaPorte County, Vanderburgh County, Allen County, Henry County, or if you're a county, school, library, it's the same growth quotient across your budget. And that's based upon the 6-year average non-farm income. Except for the last couple years where the legislators have capped that at 4%. It's the lesser of 4% or that formula. In the last couple years, it's been 4%.
Really quick, is that a rotating, floating number, the 6 years, or is it?
Microphone.
Is that a running average? That's
Yes.
what I'm looking for. So if we have if something happens for 2 years, we may not see it for another
Correct.
5 years.
Yeah.
We got hit with that with the health department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a rolling average, so it takes a couple of years before you really see some significant impact potentially. That's right now, if we were going with that rolling average, we'd be seeing, 5.6% increase in your budget that you'd be allowed. But again, trying to keep tax rates low, legislators have capped that increase at 4%. And they've done that again for 2026.
Okay.
Now, based upon what was passed this spring in 2027, right now we can go back to that rolling average. But for this purposes, we kept it at 4%, thinking there's a good chance that they could cap it again at 4% going forward. So that's one major assumption I'll talk about that we've assumed in here. Local income tax, we'll kind of talk about this here in a little bit, but, and I'm happy to talk about this more, and we talked about it last week, but basically the way that you've known local income tax for decades, the county has right now the edit, public safety, and certified shares that goes into your general fund right now. That's still in place for 2 more years. And then 2028, it all goes away, and we kind of start fresh. And the council has the ability to adopt up to 1.2% rate. Now that rate, you get to keep 100% of it. It's not like what you have in place right now, where you adopt a certain percentage, then you have to share it with other taxing units. Then there's other local income tax rates that you can adopt that just those units will receive, but they have to come in front of your board to request that. But in 2028, like I said, and we'll talk about what assumptions we made here, the certified shares, the edit, the public safety that you're familiar with now, and kind of have your individual buckets, those will go away. And in 2028, there'll just be one local income tax rate, and you'll be able to collect all of it and distribute it to your general fund. So we'll kind of go in that a little bit more as we get into that. But on page 3, we did go ahead and put together some estimates for you, just so you can kind of see what we're talking about. So on page 3, if you look at the top part of the schedule, again, you collect certified shares, public safety, and economic development. Those 3 revenues together, you collect about $22,186,000 this year. That's what's certified, and you receive that on a monthly basis.
Just want a small hamburger and a sweet tea large. Very little ice.
Drive.
The 2026 estimates.
Mark, you got her.
That's awfully nice of you to buy me lunch. Have dinner.
Maybe she could be a milkshake.
Me too. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but the 2026 estimates came out a couple of weeks ago. So based upon the 2026 estimates from DLGF, your certified shares is increasing from 6.1 million to 6.3 million. The public safety is increasing from about 8.5 to 8.8 million. And then your edit is increasing from about 7.6 to almost 7.9 million. So in total, about $23 million is what we should estimate in 2026. So that's kind of in line as you think about the economy. Most people have been seeing increases in their salaries. That corresponds with the increase in local income tax that we would anticipate you receiving in 2026. 2027, to be conservative, we kept that flat. I've had some clients say, don't keep it flat. Let's just show like a 2 or 3% increase, or look at the last 5 years and see what that is to try to be more accurate. But for right now, we just kept it flat. And again, in 2028, those 3 individual income taxes go away, and you'll be able to adopt one local income tax. And we're showing that if you adopt a 0.7 rate, that would generate about $22.8 million. So close to what you're collecting now. So that's what we've assumed for 2028, that you've adopted a 0.7% rate. Again, that's your body's decision, and right now, that's an annual decision. So every year, the council will have to, at budget time, make a decision by October 1 what that local income tax rate will be.
Do we
They
know
can
what
change from
that
year to year.
number would be to an individual then?
I don't have that calculated here, but we could. And what makes it difficult is, that's just the 1.2 rate for the county.
Correct.
You're going to have all the townships, you're going to have cities and towns that with a population of less than 3,500 come to you. You're going to have fire territories, fire districts come to you asking for lit rates. So
Everybody's just going to pile on, just going to have layers.
Right. So this 0.7, that's just the county's portion. And then you're going to have Michigan City and let's see LaPorte. Those city councils are going to have their own local income tax rate up to 1.2%. So, right now, everyone in LaPorte County pays the same local income tax rate. Starting in 2028, you could have individuals paying different local income tax rates depending upon where they live.
Somewhat like LaPorte City had the wheel tax separate from all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very similar that, the wheel taxes, if you live in LaPorte, you'd have the county wheel tax and the city wheel tax. And under this new legislation, if you live in a city, you'll have a county lit tax and you'll have a city lit tax.
Sure.
And then we also showed at the county, if you adopted a 1% rate, you could collect about $32.5 million. And then if you went all the way to the max, 1.2%, you'd be collecting a little over $39 million in revenue. And I will tell you, this new lit structure, it gives the county councils a lot of control because now the other most other units, except for the cities and towns above 3,500, are going to have to come to you for their allocation, so you get to decide. But then also, as you can see, you can adopt a lot less, smaller rate and collect a lot more revenue than what you're currently doing.
A question about the other units that are asking for permission in order to implement a lit, the small towns particularly. Do they each individually get a different rate, or are we setting it for all of them uniformly?
You'd set one rate, and then it's allocated by population.
Okay.
So, let me correct that. So let's say Michigan City wants it. That rate would be set for all of them, or would it just be for the residents of Michigan City?
Just Michigan City.
Michigan City's a larger city, so they set their own independently, but the smaller
Smaller
towns,
ones.
smaller towns are all the same.
Yep.
They'd be blanketed all under one. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not like if you have, let's say, two, or say three cities and towns under 3,500 population, and they all come to you and ask for an allocation. You're not able to pick and choose and say, well, yeah, you do a good job efficiently, we're going to give it to you, but we're not going to give it to town B because we don't feel like you are responsible. It's you approve it all, and then and you get to depict the rate, but then what that rate is, that gets allocated by population to those three towns.
And just so we're expecting it, I think every one of those small towns will come to us because they absolutely rely on the certified shares, the lit economic development, and the lit public safety to run their budgets.
Well, I've heard from some of them, they've given police raises and
Yeah.
hired more people. And they're like, what are we going to do when this expires? So,
Yeah.
That's a big one, yeah.
And same thing because you have townships, I believe, receive certified shares, so you're going to have townships coming
Libraries.
to you, and libraries, and they have to come to you before July 1.
Basically, they already have. The libraries have been coming to us for years.
Yeah.
And so, and at least 12 years that they've been coming to us.
So your responsibility and really kind of what you're having to consider and think about is going to really expand come 2027 for the 2028 budget because of all those coming for you asking for their allocation.
What's the maximum county council raise can get them?
Yeah.
2020.
Page 4, again, this is just kind of a summary of your local income tax.
Something going on.
This is important as you're looking at your budget because I'm working with a number of counties who are thinking about increasing the local income tax because of budget constraints. So this right here shows, again, you have certified shares, your current rate's 0.5%, public safety's 0.5%, your economic development's 0.4%. You have the option to adopt a correctional facility, sometimes called jail rate of 0.2%, or an EMS rate of 0.2%, or judicial 0.2%, or acute hospital the 0.1%. Those four rates are very important and unique because unlike the first three that you have in place, you have to share that with the overlapping tax units. Those next four, you don't have to share. Those you would be able to keep 100% of the revenue for yourself and be able to use it for those type of expenses. Those, was it 6 or 7 rates combined can't be more than 2.5%. Right now, the 3 that you have right now is 1.45%. So it shows that you have capacity to raise your rate if you wanted to go all the way to the max, another 1.05%. And then there's also a property tax replacement lit. They can go up to 1.25%. Right now, you don't have that in place. That's not new money. If you were to adopt that, that basically just raises income taxes to help reduce property taxes. So some counties have that. Again, that goes away in 2028. So if you need revenue and you're looking at increasing income taxes, that's not the one that you would choose. And then some counties have a special purpose rate for special projects. It's usually for jails or courthouses, and LaPorte County doesn't have that. So your total rate for all the local income tax rates is at 1.45%. And, I think in 2025, the mean rate for all 92 counties was about 2.81%. So you guys are well below the average or the mean. And the bottom just shows some historical income taxes just to show you kind of how it has grown over the years. And then again in 2023, like many communities, that's when you adopted the public safety lit. Page 8. This is kind of a good scheduled graph. Just shows you how your net property taxes have grown over the years, and then the red also shows how your circuit breaker losses have also increased over the years. So in 2022, you collected about $34 million in levy from property taxes, but there's about $6.2 million that you gave back to the taxpayers in LaPorte County. And you can see how that has kind of grown over time, and then how we're expecting it to increase again as Senate Bill SCA comes into play over the next couple years. If you want to skip to page 7, I'm just kind of hitting some of the highlights. As we talked about, and this is going to be important for a lot of our assumptions, a lot of this is going to be dictated on your tax base. And we talked about SCA 1 gave a lot of deductions and exemptions to taxpayers who hadn't received them before. Well, if your assessment grows just because of trending, because of the economy, which we hope that happens, that's going to offset a lot of those deductions. If the economy doesn't continue to grow, or stagnates in the next couple of years, that's going to make that impact of SA1 even larger. So a lot of this is going to be dependent upon your tax base and how it just grows through the economy. And this is kind of important on page 7, because typically, everything else being equal, as your tax base increases, your tax rate decreases. It's an inverse relationship. If your assessed value grows faster than your budget, then you need a smaller tax rate to fund your budget. And that's what we fear if your tax base doesn't grow as fast as your budget because of SCA 1, we're going to see an increase in tax rates. And with the increase in tax rates, you typically see an increase in circuit breaker losses. But this is kind of exactly what we're how it should work, because on page 7, your tax base has been growing and the county's tax rate has been decreasing. So it's kind of working how it's supposed to.
Can you elaborate on, so we're seeing our circuit breaker increase, but our tax rate for the county's portion is decreasing. So my presumption is that other taxing districts are causing, either through issuance of debt or through overlapping districts like cities where they typically have higher tax rates. Is this where our increase in circuit breaker is coming from? What's causing that?
Yeah, I mean, with you as the county unit, you're impacted by every unit in the county. So you're right. If a school, if a city, if their rate increases or their budget increases, whether it's through debt or what have you, if that increases faster or more than its tax base and its circuit breaker losses increases by you being a component of that taxing district, you're going to see a portion of that increase as well.
Can you also explain the way that debt impacts this? Because debt is treated differently in this whole system of what gets paid first.
Bonds that are payable from property taxes.
Yes.
You're right. To protect the bondholder and to be able to make Indiana paper marketable, worth buying, they are kind of outside the circuit breaker losses. One, through referendum, if mostly schools might have a referendum if they issue debt and it passes, then any of that tax rate is outside any of the circuit breaker. If it's not through referendum, or if the county or the city were to issue property taxes or issue debt payable from property taxes, those bonds get paid first. So there's no revenue reduced to make those bond payments. So everyone else gets hurt worse. All the other funds get hurt worse.
Okay, that was the point I was hoping you would make, which is that as other entities in the county issue more debt, that we see an impact to the circuit breaker. So it's something for us to keep an eye on and be cognizant of. Thank you.
If you skip to page 9, a couple of observations that we saw. I'll kind of hit a couple of these, and then we'll see it as we go through the actual schedules. We did notice your CUMCAP Development Fund. You're able to adopt a rate up to 0.0333, so a little over 3 cents. And right now, your rate is a little over 1 cent. If you were to increase your CUMCAP Development Fund up to the max 3 cents, that could generate an additional about $1.3 million in revenue after circuit breaker losses. So and it's too late to adopt the rate for 2026. We would have had to have done that by May of 31 of this year. But just something to think about for 2027, 2028, as we see budgets get even tighter and tighter, and the impacts of SE1 become more prevalent. That may be one opportunity for you to generate some additional revenue.
Now, what's CCD limited to, if anybody recalls, where it can be spent?
If you look on page 30, we actually it's mostly capital projects.
Okay.
But what I do see, a lot of our clients, I think it's more flexible than what a lot of people realize. So if you look on page 30, we have a fund description of all the funds that we looked at and what the money could be spent for. So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about the CCD fund is it can be used for computers and software. Not only the capital expense, but to help pay for salaries related to those type of expenses. So if you're looking at if that's currently being paid out of your general fund or your edit, and if we see that that's getting tight, we could actually move some of those expenses to your CCD fund.
Great, thank you.
We already talked about the local income tax, the county health fund. We'll talk about that as we get into the schedules, because as you probably know, we're going to see a significant reduction in revenue next year in the state fund. And then the road funding, I have a little blurb in there because, as you know, you have your restricted and unrestricted account where you have to spend 50% of the revenue you receive on the restricted. That has decreased to 40% if you meet certain requirements. And that's the 2 bullet points right there. So something to consider, because I know that's one thing that counties have kind of tried to push back as requiring us to use 50% of our revenue for that restricted, when it'd be nice to have it more towards the operating side of things. So if you meet these two requirements, then you'll have to use 40%.
The county health funding here, that anticipates us leaving Health First Indiana, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Continuing it.
Continuing.
Yeah, and that's one of the assumptions that we have in here, so we can talk about that.
I believe currently what we're anticipating doing is leaving Health First Indiana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like leaving it.
Yeah, not receiving the funding because it came with, they reduced the amount of money that was coming for it,
Right.
and then it didn't make sense to participate anymore.
So that's something that we can.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up tonight because
I don't know that the commissioners have actually.
It hasn't been officially done, so therefore he was not informed of
Gotcha.
it. It's in,
It's in progress.
So if you could have a comparison number, that would, on this particular subject, that would be great.
it's a new factor.
And as you know, it's relevant because it'll cause the levy to need to be shifted back.
Yeah, and that's why we go through the schedules. We can talk about that because I didn't want to make some assumptions without talking to you first. So yeah, that's exactly why we're here tonight.
Okay.
It's page 10, starting on some of the assumptions. We already kind of talked about using 4% for the maximum levy growth quotient. Page 11. I think this will be important for you looking at your budget this year. This looks at your budget starting in 2022, and it looks at your maximum levy, but it also looks at how you've allocated it amongst your funds that make up your maximum levy, or within your maximum levy. So, like most counties, about 90% is used for your general fund. 89%, 89.8% was in 2025. and you can see how the other funds are allocated. We kind of kept that consistent, at least for this first draft. But again, this is really based upon your budget and how your expenses are allocated within each one of these funds. So this is where you have the decision to move levy from one fund to another as you determine where your needs are. So that's something we can manipulate and adjust based upon your guidance.
I know that you have a lot of time, but maybe you can answer later, but what would go underneath the regional planning?
That's NERC. Regional planning, is that,
That's what I'm asking. That's what-
Yeah.
It's NERC and it's a fixed amount and it's increased for the next couple of years.
yeah. It's set through statute.
Okay, but so those lower, so the lower numbers were, in 2022, we didn't put anything in NERC? That's what I'm asking.
I believe we were running off of savings at one point because it had built up some money in that fund, and so it was running. I think it's been a little while now.
I don't want to go too far.
Yeah.
You answered my question.
Yeah.
I thought that's
Yeah,
what
there
it
was a
was.
mistake on the cemetery
Yeah.
fund.
I'm sorry?
There was a mistake on the
Just
cemetery.
running off. We had kind of built up a
Okay.
balance.
So you weren't sending,
Well, thank you.
No, we were sending money. We were just using the balance rather than having the levy.
There was something, sorry.
Page 12, footnote number 4. This is the circuit breaker losses. So again, this is the amount of levy that you're not collecting because of those credits. So you can see in 2022, you lost about 15.3% of your levy. Same thing in 2023. It decreased in 2024, about 13.5%. Again, about 13% this year. We're projecting in 2026, it's going to creep up a little bit to about 14%. And that's one reason, because it looked like, based upon your assessments that you just certified, you saw about a 6% increase in your tax base from last year to this year. So that's very, very good, which helped you not see more of an impact for 2026. But we are showing in 2027 it increasing because as those deductions start ramping up, that's where we're going to see more reduction in tax base, potential increase in tax rates and circuit breaker losses. So that's why you see about 16% loss in your revenue from circuit breaker going forward. The next assumption that I really want to hit that's going to, I think, dictate a lot of these numbers is if you look at the bottom, page 13. We didn't have your 2026 budget estimates, and I'm not sure where you are in the budget process. So right now, we basically just took your 2025 budget and increased it by 3%, just for illustration, and just carried that forward.
Can we use those numbers?
Knowing that may not be the case, but again, this is just for kind of at least show you if at 3%, this is where you would land. So with that, we'll kind of start going through the individual schedules, unless there's any questions to this point. If not, if you turn to page 14, I started with the local income tax revenues because, again, they're going to be going away. So we did show 3 years of history, just so you can see what you've collected and what you've spent over the last 3 years, and then how your ending balance has changed. So if you kind of look on the left side, you see an index. I'll probably kind of be referring to those numbers a lot. So on line 2, that's the amount of revenue that you're collecting from your edit fund, which is Fund 1112. So if you look at 2025, again, if you look at line 2, you're going to receive about $7,600,000 this year in income taxes. Now, you did get another supplemental deduction of almost $600,000 this May. We haven't not continued that going forward, just to be conservative. I would not be surprised if you get another supplemental next year, just because, one, your income isn't growing, as we were showing that you're going to be a higher amount. So there's a chance you could get another $500,000 or $600,000 next year. But for this purpose, we haven't shown that because we didn't want to count something that wasn't definite. So in 2025, we're showing that you're getting about $8.1 million. Underneath that's your disbursement, so this is your budget. And then if you look at line 13 and 14, there was also $2.2 million of encumbrances from last year. And then so far, you've had $2.2 million of additional appropriations. So for the total year, if you spend your entire budget, you're going to spend about $10.4 million. And then if you look at line 29, based upon these assumptions, you're going to spend about $2.2 million more than what you're bringing in your edit fund. But that doesn't really concern me too much because you started the year off with about $7.5 million beginning balance. An edit fund oftentimes pays for capital projects over time.
What dates were these numbers through? Like, where was your cutoff for?
For like the additional appropriations?
Yeah.
Probably last time we talked to Mike a week or so ago. So
Okay, so they're pretty recent?
yes.
Okay.
So in 2026, we're showing another $7.8 million in revenue coming in, assuming you don't get a supplemental distribution. We just kept your personal services, supplies, and services and charges to 3% increase. So assuming there are no additional appropriations in 26, we're showing that you're going to be bringing another $2.5 million in revenue that you'll add to your balance. So that was one thing that I know from working with you in the past. There's sometimes where there may be contracts or other things that you have that aren't really necessarily budgeted, but you have them. I didn't know if that was the case here, that there really are things that that you'll be paid out of this fund that may not be in the budget that we should account for. So that's something that, wanted to talk to you, maybe commissioners, and Mike, to see if there was anything else that we need to put in here to make it more realistic.
So, question, we talked about it, Randy, with that, we signed up for that cost savings Amoresco, is that how many, you have to remember how long that was? I have some of the council members are.
Was it a 20-year?
What?
Where's Guy?
So Amoresco,
He walked back out.
we've been under contract with him, and I think we're about halfway through that contract.
Okay. And that's paid out of this fund?
I'm not sure where it's being paid.
Seated or casual?
One of those,
I know it's paid out of one.
not sure which one.
We can look into that.
Yeah.
Since Mike knows, I have no idea.
Off the top of my
I
head.
didn't think you would.
Joey would know like that.
I know.
But, and she.
Anyway, that's just wanted to take, because that we're under requirement. That's
Okay.
large.
We'll look into that. So if you look at 2026 and 2027, again, not assuming there's anything else beyond what you typically budget, we're showing in 2027, you're going to end the year at $10,143,000 ending balance. Now again, in 2028, this fund will go away. Well, I should say you'll no longer receive revenue in this fund. What we don't know yet, we haven't gotten an interpretation from DLGF, is will this fund go away and will you be able to transfer this $10 million into your general fund, or will you have to keep this fund and just start using money until it's gone? Right now, just to kind of keep this simple, we're just assuming that you'll be able to transfer the money out of your lit funds and deposit into your general fund. So likewise, in 2028, we're showing, you see here, no revenue coming in, and we're also showing your expenses, that $5.7 million, we're showing those are going to be moved into your general fund. The alternative would be you'd keep the $5.7 million there and be able to, almost 2 years, fund this with your cash on hand. Is the alternative. But right now, with the economic development, again, unless the Amoresco is paid out of here and we're not currently showing it, I mean, it shows that you're definitely collecting enough revenue to cover your budget expenses. But if there is also any long-term capital, if you have any capital projects that you're aware of that you may want to use the edit for, commissioners, that's something we can incorporate in here too as well, to kind of show that it's kind of maybe not formally budgeted, but you have in your mind that you want to use edit for, some major renovations or some, road work or something like that. We can put that in here for you.
We actually do have some set amount that will, because of the heating, air conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
So
There's already projects.
we have some project numbers already anyway.
So that's the kind of things you can get to us and we can incorporate these in here.
We'd have to have a separate meeting, but yes, okay, thank you.
Page 15 is public safety. Similar there, in 2024, you ended the year with $1 million in the bank. We're projecting about $9.1 million collected this year with the encumbrances and additional appropriations on line 16. We anticipate to spend about $9.4 million, so spending about $241,000 more than what you're anticipated to collect for 2025. Again, not worried about it because you do have a healthy balance, as long as we're not going to have any additional large additional appropriations this year shouldn't be a concern. And then 2026 and 2027, again, unless there's some additional expenses that you have budgeted beyond the first three line items there, the personal services, supplies, and services and charges, should be collecting more revenue than what you're bringing in. And then in 2028, we're showing that $4 million balance that we're projecting. That will be transferred to the general fund, as well as the $7.5 million of expenses to the general fund.
So a lot of these funds you talk about ending, and not particularly the subject here, but as you're going up through this in 2028, if we don't adopt anything until 2028 for 2029, is there a max that we're going to be penalized for because we didn't start in 2026? Does that make sense?
Well, in 2020, are you talking about for the local income tax?
I'm just, in general, I mean, we're naming all the things that are ending in, but basically 2028, so.
Just for local income tax. Mhm.
Right. So if we wait till the year before that happens and start curing those taxes then, is there a penalty for not starting in 2020? Because, I mean, nothing would surprise me because of this whole thing in the first place, that we get penalized if we don't start doing this like right now.
You don't have to make any changes to your local income tax until 2027. You'll have to make a decision on what you want to collect in 2028.
Okay, so there's nothing, because you didn't do this.
Right. No.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So you really can't, and that was something that we've been asked, is can you make a decision this year for what you want to do in 2028? And this really doesn't become effective until July 1, 2027. So you can't adopt anything right now proactively for 2028.
But there was some taxes, that, if you go back a few, that we could always start implementing if we wanted to.
Yes. Yeah, you could increase your current local income taxes that you have now, the certified shares or the ed or public safety.
At 1.2%.
Yeah, you have room to increase that to above what you have right now.
Okay.
And that, if that's something that you want to do, if we look through this and things are tighter than what you want, once you start looking at 2026 budget, we could increase your current taxes that you have in place right now, and you have until October 31 to do that.
I noticed you said that we had 7 million on hand basically, and you were comfortable with 2025 to 2026. But unfortunately, though, we started out 2025 with in the hole because we didn't really we might have money in different accounts, but we don't have money that we can spend right now. So I know you used the word that you're still comfortable with it, but not according to what we see so far.
Yeah, there could be some cash flow issues in some of these funds.
That's what I'm talking,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, where you have the money, but it's kind of at the end of the year when it
Yes,
all
sir.
comes
Yes,
in.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where you might have to do some internal borrowing with handle those month-to-month cash flow.
In your comment about that was specific to economic development lit, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the economic development, again, just looking at 2025, we're showing an ending balance of $5.3 million and growing. Again, it goes back to, are there any other large capital budget items that we're not seeing here on an annual basis that we should be aware of? Because again, like if you look at 2025, if that 2.2 million on line 13 and the 2.2 million on line 14, that $4.5 million, if those are like reoccurring expenses that you just didn't get budgeted, then my answer would be a little bit different, because then we'd be seeing a negative 2.2 million every year, and that's just not sustainable. So that's why you want to make sure these on line 13 and 14, those are really just like one-time expenses and not something that's reoccurring. Same thing on page 15, the public safety, on line 13 and 14, we're showing about, $1.9 million of additional expenses that were beyond the budget for 2025. If those are really reoccurring expenses, we're showing that in 2026, again, you'd be eating into your balance each year. So again, just something that's not sustainable. So page 16 is looking at your general fund now. So this is, as you know, is your biggest fund. So at the end of 2024, if you look at line 48, we are showing a balance of about $13.8 million. And I would say, we haven't really talked about this yet because this, the general fund has a lot more operating. If you look at line 50, you see that 25.96% says operating balance percentage. That is looking at your $13.8 million compared to your budget of $53 million. So that's basically saying that you have enough money in the bank to fund 25% of your budget. 15% is what we usually say is the bare minimum. That is basically 2 months, meaning you have basically 2 months of money in the bank to cover 2 months of expenses. 25 to 30% is kind of like where we try to have a lot of clients be. So you're right there. 50% is kind of like a goal. That means you have enough money in the bank to cover 6 months of expenses. So if for some reason that your settlement is late and you don't collect your property taxes for 6 months, you have enough money in the bank to cover pretty much all your
Or
expenses.
5 years, I think.
So, one thing I would say, so again, 25% is pretty healthy, but you can see you were kind of going down for next couple of years. Again, 15% is the minimum. As the legislators, as you can probably imagine, as we talked about reduction in property taxes, they're kind of forcing us to go more towards local income taxes. And that's a more volatile revenue stream than property taxes. Property taxes are pretty secure. Once you start looking at more service fees or local income taxes, that's more volatile and changes with the economy, and it takes longer to recover. The economy goes down. So that's where we're recommending to our clients to have larger maybe balances than what you've in the past.
This might be a silly question, maybe nothing that you can answer, but in the past, we had to be careful with certain funds. Let's use the Cume Bridge, for example. All of a sudden, they see a large amount of money that we're banking on, and all of a sudden, they end up taking it away for us. And it has happened in the past on certain things. We've been told that, you're too high on this amount, save too much money. But according to this is probably what they're going to start expecting us to do is bank this money.
I hear that a lot, and I really haven't seen the state take money away. Now, I did during this session.
It has happened.
Okay.
Trust me.
I will say that I did hear to this session where they're looking at, some legislators were looking at certain communities, and they did see very healthy balances. Now, one of the things that I kind of brought back was this last couple of years really isn't a good sense of the overall economy or health of communities, because you had ARPA funds, and then you've had probably interest earnings that were a lot higher than has been historically. So taking a snapshot at your account balances right now, they probably are pretty healthy. They're probably healthier than they've been for a number of years for those two things. If it hadn't been for the ARPA funds and be able to use money for operating your capital expenses that you would have normally used your balances for, and the large investments, most communities' balances would be much less than what they are now. So I always caution legislators when they look at these balances, they're kind of, I think, misleading. Not that they're good and you're still doing, being responsible with the funds on hand, but there's some extenuating circumstances that really help these look probably healthier than they otherwise would have been.
Am I correct in understanding that this is also somewhat misleading because these financials are captured at the end of the, at the beginning of the fiscal year, day one, which we've just gotten a large infusion, usually from our tax draws that came in November, December. And so these numbers look really good, but now we have to live off of that for the next 6 months. Right. So when we see a number like 13 million, that might not actually be enough to get us all the way to the next tax draw. And so we're dipping into the negative for a month or two. And am I also correct in my understanding that when we dip into the negative, we can't do additional appropriations during that time?
I'll defer to Mike. I think as long as because a lot of your funds are pooled, so you have to kind of look at your funds as a whole.
Yeah. We can, if we know there's revenue coming in, we can take a look at it. We annualize on a couple of our funds.
Okay.
The numbers that we do now. And so therefore we can appropriate because we know that we're locked in with those funds.
But it would be correct to say that if we actually drew general fund down to zero, that would be a really dangerous place to be in.
Yeah, you do not want to do that. Yes, I would recommend not doing that. And that's
Clear,
why.
But some people see dollar signs and they think that.
And for that very reason, that's why I think having a healthier balance is important, because you're right. There are times where January looks really good. but come May and June, you may be negative because you don't get your next distribution until the end of June, or maybe in 1st of July. So that's where I think it's going to be more important than ever to have very healthy balances for situations like that.
I guess my referral to that question was that I think then maybe the legislators will leave us alone if we actually do accumulate funds in certain balances that in the past have been, they take advantage of that situation, saying, why are we accumulating bridges, for example? And that was one that we were told that we had to knock it down some by doing so.
Yeah.
Just-
Something I'm noticing that may be missing in this, one that we mentioned before, which is the health fund, which may need additional levy attributed to it. But I'm also noticing a couple pages down the line, you project that the 2015 reassessment will go negative in 2028. So levy will need to be allocated to that to shore it up, meaning there will be less in general. Was that contemplated in this?
No, at this point, no. We just wanted to show that it was going negative until we had this conversation to say, do you want us to move? And then do you want us to try to achieve a 25% ending balance or 50%? So we can show that if we move a certain amount of revenue from general fund, then what that would do to the general fund.
Okay, both of those things might cause this to look a little less rosy.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to kind of look at things in the interest of time, if we look at years 28 through 30, obviously you put in the minimum, the 0.7% flat lit to be similar to what we could enact, just to try to bridge that gap from 28 forward. And the pages hereafter, right, are for each of the respective funds. And like Justin mentioned, the 2015 reassessment, I see that the 1161 is in there, but there's not a lot of changes to those overall unless we do something with our levy, correct?
Yeah.
So unless there's anything else to highlight here, is it fair to say that each of us on the council should probably take a look at this and filter our questions through the auditor if there's anything that's requested or concerns with this report?
If I don't mind, just two things as you're looking at this. I think the most important number to realize is in line 17. So if like for instance on page 16 for the general fund, if you look at line 17 for 2026, we're showing about $57.6 million. That's really basically the amount of revenue we're anticipating that you're going to collect in 2026. So when you're thinking about your budget for your general fund, unless we move levy around, that's the amount that your budget should be if you want to have a balanced budget. If your budget is more than that, that means you're going to start eating into your balance. So that's kind of a key number, I think, for each one of these line items to think about.
Provided that we're in a good spot with the remaining accounts that come out of the levy.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And then the only other fund is, again, page 18 that you talked about, the health fund. I kept that going for 2026. So that might be one that we may want to completely eliminate. The only question is of the budget that we're showing in 2026, how much of that, if any, would need to be moved to page 17, 1159? Because again, that would impact how much levy we might need to move to your health fund.
Okay.
Can I also flag page 23, noticing that as the years go on, the ending balance of MVH motor vehicle highway is considerably in the negative.
Yeah, that was one where if looking at your budget, you've been eating into your budget, looks like the last, 24 and then 25 if your budget comes to fruition. That is one that fluctuates. You don't always spend everything in your budget for the MVH. But yes, if looking at that budget, that's not sustainable, and that's something that we would need to address in 2027.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions for Jason? So I would say review these on your own. Any questions, concerns, filter them through Mike and Joey, and then we can get that back to Baker Tilly.
And again, I want this report to be something that you use throughout the years. So if you see something that you think would help you, analyze, because what I want this to be is a tool that once we get this finalized and department heads, those coming in front of you for additional appropriations, you can look at this and say, okay, if we grant you this, then our ending balance is going from X to Y. And is that something that we want to do?
When do you anticipate the final draft being?
It's really, I think, we're just dependent upon you on what changes you see are appropriate, what budget when you guys kind of more formalize your budget, or even if it's a preliminary budget, if you want us to incorporate that in here, we can kind of show that so you can go and see, not just can you fund it for 2026, but what's it look for 2027 and 2028. And so once we get the information, we can turn around pretty quick for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so for the remainder of the session, one thing to discuss is, the auditor's office is currently exploring, having a budget workshop for the 11th of September, and looking at future dates for availability for this room.
All I have is the 11th right now.
Correct.
Do not check any other date, and I won't be able to do that until tomorrow.
Okay,
I do need to run across the street and print the minutes, because for some reason I do not have a copy here, so, if you wanna
we'll
bring
call a
the books,
recess.
in between, if you want to take a few minutes, and if you want to load that up with the books, or should I do that? I should grab the books and take them with us,
Gotcha.
whenever you're ready to take a break.
All right, is there any concern with the 11th, as I see folks grabbing their phone?
Nope. Yeah. and What time we start? 5?
Probably 5?
5?
We have I would be
You know, limited.
I don't know how the weather's gonna be. Is there any ceremonies September 11th?
There's all kinds of
I
them.
know.
Usually not in the evening, but
Yeah,
Just throwing it,
I know.
Just throwing it.
Yeah.
Date that is unusual.
it is.
Yeah.
It's a day I prefer to stay off of, but, hey.
It's your call, but.
Are you gonna limit the time? That's why I'm asking, 'cause I have another meeting that night. I mean, is it gonna be, we're gonna meet from
Let's leave it as
5 to
this.
6:30 or
So I
something like?
started at 5 to give you that extra hour.
Yeah.
It might be nice if it's not constrained so that we can do whatever it takes to get it done.
So let's leave it open for now. I'm hearing the discussion about the 11th for certain, but then also the availability. So, let's regroup and get at least something finalized before the end of the week.
I need to.
And I'll get communicate
for another
further.
meeting at 7 that night.
Okay,
So with that. Sorry.
fair enough. All right. Any other concerns? All right, then let's recess for the budget hearing and take let's call it a 10-minute break. And we'll call it 12-minute break. We'll call it 6:10. And start the regular council meeting.